Are you interested in studying abroad this year? Here are four things that you're going to need to do to get started with your journey. So, I'm going to walk you through four different things you can do right now if you are interested in studying abroad this year. And one of the things that I want to say is that it's going to be important to take each of them step by step so that you have a very clear understanding of what you're trying to do along the way. I know that when you're first getting started with study abroad, it can be very stressful because number one, you're really excited. I totally get that. But number two, you're also trying to figure out what all the different steps are. And there are so many different steps that you need to follow, so many of them that I've talked about in videos on my channel. But when thinking about starting this journey, there are essentially four different things that you can do. So we're going to talk about those today, and I hope that it's going to be enlightening to you. So the first thing that you should do if you are interested in studying abroad this year is to think, reflect, and synthesize. This is something that I share with the students that I advise. If you're interested in getting some affordable study abroad advising, click into the link below in the description. But this is something that is very important because, as I said in the opener, when students are first getting started with interest in study abroad, maybe they've heard about a friend that has done it, maybe their school has talked about it, maybe they were just like, can I go study somewhere else? And they're like, I don't know what to do. Then you get the wheels spinning because you're like, well, how do I figure it out? What do I do? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? All those different things. And that's the entire reason why I'm here on this channel. But you need to kind of start from within and just kind of let the dust settle and think. And what you're going to be thinking about is, why do I want to do this? I talk about this all the time, that answering the why of what you want to do when you study abroad and why you want to do it is going to be important because it is very expensive. It is a time consuming thing to go through and apply and then of course actually do it. And in a lot of ways, it's not easier than, let's say, studying at home. A lot of people think that, oh, if I go and study abroad, it's going to be easy because I'm going to be traveling and get to do all these fun things. That is a part of it, but in a lot of ways, it's going to be more challenging. And so you definitely want to think about what your why is. And so I always like to have students start with that. You also want to think as well, what are some of the things that you actually want to accomplish while you study abroad? Because it's important to have goals while you study abroad. So maybe you want to improve your language skills. Maybe you do just want to meet other people and broaden out your network. There is no right or wrong answer with your goals, but you definitely want to think about that. You also want to think as well, what is going to work best for my personality? This is one of the factors that's often overlooked with students. So they may think about, let's say they want to go to Germany and they're like, hey, I want to go study in Berlin and I want to go do all these fun things. But then as they start researching Berlin, they're like, I don't know if that particular culture will fit my personality, what my interests are. Do I want to live in a main city or do I want to live in a smaller place? So all those things need to come into the equation when you are thinking about what you want to do. I also too want you to just kind of reflect on what have been some of the great experience that you've had so far. Have you maybe traveled before? Maybe there was a place you really enjoyed and you're like, hey, I could go back there and study abroad and potentially live there for a while. Are there some places that you've been and you're like, yeah, I don't think that, if I didn't enjoy it on vacation, I may not want to go back and live there for 6 months. So you definitely want to factor in those types of things. And one of the things that I do have for you is a freebie. So if you click into the description box, you will see my starter worksheet. And so this is great for students who are just getting started with their study abroad journey, or even if, let's say, you've done one study abroad journey and you want to do another, this is going to help you to go through and just kind of start outlining the basics. So you're going to go in there and write down your why. You're going to write down some of your goals. You're going to even write down some of the places that you might be interested in exploring to get started with. So definitely go ahead and download it. It's completely free and it's been very useful to a lot of students as they have started this journey. Number two, what I want you to do is to begin your research. So this is going to be really important for you, not just as you're thinking about how to find programs, but also as well as you're trying to figure out what the different parts are going to be. And this is where people like me often come in, study abroad advisors, where people start reaching us when they are in this stage. I will say that it is better to reach out to us in stages 3 or 4. So definitely stay for the next 2 steps. But I will just say that in this particular phase, you are just gathering data. And this is a part where a lot of people often overlook because they're like, hey, I want to go to this place. and then they go Google, they find the first place that's on page one of maybe a program that may not even be right for them. And they're like, hey, that's what I want to do. You definitely want to dig deeper. So even if you have to go to page 3, 4, 5, 6 of Google, even if you're not just on Google, you're talking to people, you're in forums, you're trying to figure out what is going on. So maybe you have a list of, let's say, 5 or 6 locations, and you're trying to figure out within those locations, what are some of the programs that are going to be great for me? One of the interesting things about study abroad is that there are so many different opportunities. So maybe you are going to be doing something that is more faculty led, that would be related to your school. You could be doing something that is more independent, which is maybe a nonprofit program where you're going to different places. There's so many different opportunities. And so you want to figure out, number one, does your school already have opportunities that you could pursue? If not, or even if they do and it's maybe not right for you, do you want to do something that's related to your major? Do you want to do something that is completely different? There are so many different opportunities. Do you want to do an internship while you're abroad? There are so many different things. And so you would have already used the starter worksheet to go through and start getting the ideas flowing. But then once you do that, you want to do your research. And so you want to go through and look at different programs and see what are they offering. Because again, with study abroad, since there are so many different opportunities, there are lots of different components. So for example, you may find one program that's in a place that you really want to go, but with the housing that they include, they don't allow you to have off-campus housing. And then with the housing that they include, they also require you to live with other people. Maybe you don't want to live with other people, but then there's another program that you find that is maybe more expensive, but they don't require you to live with other people. You still may have to use their housing, but they also allow you to like move in when you want, and there's not as much structure, and you get to take a lot of different classes. So there's so many different formulations that you could come across, and I would hate for you to miss out because you haven't done your research. So what I recommend to students is to, first of all, make an exhaustive list. You could start out with a list, and this is typically how people go about picking unis and colleges, right? You start out with a huge list. So I would say for this particular endeavor, what you want to do is maybe make a list of 20 programs that you'd be interested in. And you could do it based on location. You could do it based on what they offer. You can make your list however you want it to be. And then I want you to go back and narrow down based on what is going to be most impactful to you. So that could be a couple of things. It could be location. Maybe there is a place that you would definitely want to go, and so you don't want to X out any of those programs. It could be based on the pricing. I know that the pricing and the cost of study abroad programs can be a very sticking point for a lot of students. So maybe you're like, the ones that are too expensive, I maybe will choose one of them out of that list, but the rest of them are going to have to go. And you're going to narrow it down based on whatever is going to be important to you. And then after that, you should have a list of maybe 5 to 6 programs. Now, you're not applying to these programs just yet. What you are doing is saying that these are the programs that I feel connect most with me. These are the ones that I feel that if I can move forward and pursue, that I would definitely want to pursue them. So you're just going to make that list, and then you're going to move forward to step 3. With step 3, what you are doing is you are spending some time making some counterpoints. So you are focused on, what are some of the things that if I begin on this journey are going to be roadblocks for me. Now, I can tell you in my experience of working with so many students who are studying abroad in different places around the world, that a lot of them come down to 3 simple things that are going to be roadblocks. For some students, all 3 are roadblocks. For some students, maybe 1 or 2. For some students, there's definitely one that is a main roadblock. So the first roadblock that we definitely want to explore that could be one for you is your parents, right? Because parents and family members, guardians, whoever is going to be helping you potentially pay for this are often a roadblock. And if you click into the description box again, you will find that I also have a worksheet for that. It has been helpful to a lot of students to just help you build a conversation to have with your parents, because I know that this can be a sticking point for a lot of people. So I want to create something that was going to be useful for you that is also free as well. And so when talking to parents about study abroad, you have to walk a fine line, because you want to also understand what their potential rejection of that idea is going to be. There are plenty of that. I'm going to link a video above where I talked about the sort of sticking points that a lot of parents have about study abroad. But you have to consider that that may be a huge roadblock for you in terms of potentially allowing you to go. I know that for some students, once you're sort of out of the house, you can do what you want, but you're not going to necessarily have the support. So maybe you're going to be funding this all on your own because your parents have said no. What does that look like for you? So you really want to think about that as a potential roadblock. If that's not going to be something that's going to be a roadblock for you, it wasn't for me, then great. But you just need to think about that that could be a potential roadblock. So you know your parents better than anyone. You will know if it's going to be an issue for them. The next point to counteract is it going to be too expensive? Now we know as we were going through the list, we have gone through and X'd out the ones that may be completely out of your range in terms of your budget. But maybe there's a program that you really want to do that it seems very expensive and you're like, hey, I can apply for scholarships, but there's no guarantee that I'm going to get it. So is that something that is going to be a roadblock? The other thing that you want to think about as well that a lot of students don't necessarily factor in, unfortunately, when they are thinking about study abroad is, again, they will click on a link to a program. They're like, great, this is how much it costs. They're looking at the sticker price on the screen, but they're not factoring in all the other things. So number one, if you have to pay for housing with your program, it's going to be more expensive if it's not all included. Number two, you actually have to live when you study abroad. So living expenses are often not included on that sticker price that you will see on any website. A lot of times programs will be able to advise you on what the average student spends, but that is something that a lot of students don't really think about until they're further along in the process. And then as you're in the applications and all of that, it's not like it's too late. You could always reject a program if you want to. You can always bow out of it. But again, if it was something that you had thought about from the beginning, you probably would have made a different choice, right? So this is going to be very important as you think about the expenses of how you actually budget and how you go about spending your money and what's going to be important as you do that. Last but not least, for a lot of students, does it actually fit into your overall plan? So I know that this is something that a lot of students struggle with of, thinking about when should they study abroad, where should they study abroad, is it going to be right for them in terms of their major, how does that all work? This is a very serious thing to think about because for a lot of students, it's not that there's necessarily a right or wrong answer, but I know that a lot of students have to sacrifice on one end or the other. So maybe you want to study abroad in the fall, but a particular course for your degree program was only offered in the fall. And you're like, what am I going to do now? I'm going to have to wait until the next year and take that because I can't take it in the spring semester or the spring quarter. And so there are different things that factor in with that you should definitely consider. And I would say that between parents and the financing and thinking about the overall fit within your program, that those are three things that students struggle with. So I definitely want you to factor that into your planning right now before you move forward with applying for different programs. So now that you've gone through and you have decided to study abroad and you've thought about your why and you have decided to do your research and you've thought about some of the roadblocks, it's now time to finalize your plan. So what you're going to do is you want to start looking at, based on the programs that you have decided that you want to apply to, when are the actual deadlines, what are they asking you for, because you're going to need to get all those things in place. So a lot of times they will ask you for transcripts, they may ask you for letters of recommendation. So this is where you're going to start to say, hey, like, I need to get my stuff in order. So you're going to figure out, what do I need to do if I need to request transcripts from someplace? What do I need to do to start thinking about who can write me letters of recommendation? Most of the time, you're going to have the ability or the opportunity, I guess I would say, to write an essay or letter of motivation. It's called different things based on the program and also based on the country that you're going to, but that may be required as well. And so you want to start making a list, a detailed list of all those different things. And as you know, as you would figure by now, I also have a template for that as well linked below. But that's going to be really important to sort of set the big picture for you and sort of at least get you started so that you know, like, okay, I have maybe 6 weeks until the first deadline of the application. I need to go ahead and start gathering all of my materials so that I can begin. And I would say that definitely the application itself, like the basic application, you're not really going to have a problem with that. It's basic information that you would imagine, your name, your birth date, all that great stuff. But as you get into the more detailed things like the letter of motivation or the essay or anything else that could require a lot of detail, they may have questions or prompts that they also want you to answer. that you're really going to need to think through those, because that's where it gets a little bit tricky. Students start to, get really stressed. And one of the things I would say is that you definitely don't want to leave that until the end. You want to maybe focus on that as much as you can, particularly if that's something that you struggle with, so that you can sort of have the ability to put your best foot forward with that. So that's going to be very important. And one of the things that I know that students really struggle with as they're going through their research phase is to find study abroad programs. And so I want you to go ahead and watch this video so that you can learn more about the 3 different types of common study abroad programs. I'll see you over there.